Welcome to the podcast, where street smart, business smart, all kinds of smart people share their insights into the world of marketing, career journeys, and personal growth. So sit back and prepare to get enlightened with your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career and life forward. Tribe, I am beyond thrilled to welcome my guest today, Brendan Browne, VP of Global Talent Acquisition at a little company we like to call LinkedIn. And he has the uncommon privilege of leading recruiting for the company that continues to completely redefine and transform the world of talent, LinkedIn. And he's been in recruiting for 15 plus years and has been fortunate to have had some amazing experiences working in markets across the globe, from coast to coast in the US, across EMEA, and throughout the world, with incredible colleagues solving hard and meaningful problems. And we're going to dig into that. And today we're going to unpack his own career journey, how he landed his job at LinkedIn, and pull back the curtain and how they hire, and a ton more. Brendan, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on, my man.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Good to be here.
Stuff. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And let's dig in, right? I mean, everyone's asking, like, how the heck did this guy get to where he is now? I'm sure that's a question. You know, how does someone get to the top at LinkedIn? And I'd love if you could just unpack a little bit and give everyone listening a background on your own personal career journey.
Sure. I'll rock it through it. So I went, just like I was saying before we jumped on air here, I went to Villanova University outside of Philly. I'm from Boston. Got out of school. I studied communications. I wanted to work in TV. I was interning for free at a cable TV show. And a family friend said, "You'd be a great headhunter." I didn't know what the heck that meant at the time. Made some introductions. A woman from the Bronx, New York, who had been a recruiter a long time, hired me working for an agency. Did that for a couple of years. Absolutely positively hated it. I was just, I mean, it was pure, just, you know, eat what you kill. It's, you know, you learn the ropes, but you got to make it happen. It was
smile and dial.
Totally. I mean, it was just, it was a grind. And then from there, you know, she explained to me, this woman who mentored me said, you know, you can go in-house and it's a little bit different. And I ended up getting a job, got a recruiting call to go to this company called Sapient that was effectively a startup based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Worked for them for 5+ years. But after about a year with them in Cambridge, Mass, they said, "Hey, we need people to go out to California. Do you want to go?" I, like, on the spot, I was like, "Yeah, I'll definitely go." I'd never been to California. I've never been west of Chicago. So went home and told my buddies, who are my buddies to this day, that I was moving to California, and they're just typical Boston guys who are like, "It's bizarre out there. It's a bunch of weirdos on the West Coast. You know, what are you doing?" So I left and then get sort of into the Silicon Valley thing, and then bounced around between, you know, up and down the West Coast and spent some time up at Microsoft, et cetera. But I would say, so I went from Sapient, where I was for a long time, .com bust hit. I worked for 2 years. I stopped everything I was doing recruiting, went to film school in LA, and cool. worked for Dr. Phil. And I worked for Guy Ritchie's producer, one of his movie producers. So I was a little detour. Then I went to Microsoft, worked 4 years there. And then about 10 years ago, I said, I'm going back to Silicon Valley, and my goal is to work for a successful startup, one startup that succeeds over those 10 years. Went to a startup that did not do well, spent 3 years learning there, and then came to LinkedIn. Biggest thing I would say, just in terms of themes, are I take risk. I took a bunch of risks. I wish I had taken way more.
We could all say that.
And I would say just keep showing up. You know, I look at people that have ended up in, like, when I was earlier in my career, people that are in hugely impactful positions. I wonder, that's like, how the heck did that person get there? And I think a lot of it is commitment to sort of staying the course, because opportunities, they will arise. The timing may not be exactly what you want, but it will happen. So some of it is just the longer you stick with it, the more relationships you have, the more doors open.
It's all about relationships. So if you don't mind rewinding for a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, 2004 at Microsoft, were you working directly for Bill Gates on that team?
I worked, so it was when Bill Gates was actually still at Microsoft. I'm dating myself now, but he was the chief software architect. He had
2004 again, if you really want to date it.
Yeah, 2004, he was still the chief software architect. And they called them the Bill G groups. And it was Microsoft Research, which was, I wasn't interviewing them, but I was meeting some of the best computer scientists in the world. So it wasn't working like directly with Bill, but it was the groups that he was still managing directly. And then he moved on from there. So that was super cool, incredible experience. I'd left Microsoft not planning to go back, and now I work there again, which is
funny how things work out. And even though you didn't work directly for Bill, was there like a key learning that you got from his management style and approach specifically to hiring that you've taken with you throughout your career?
Well, at Microsoft Research, anyone in academia, I mean, if we talk to any computer science department, say Microsoft Research, they'd be like, wow, there's a lot of reverence for it. But what that really taught me was the value of relationships over the long haul. And that those relationships, like in academia as example, it's such a community that my job recruiting there would be to call Adam, who's known one of our researchers for 20 years. You make me the introduction, I talk to Adam, and the conversation is really, Adam, help me, like the field of whatever, the 50 best machine learning experts that are up and coming. Can we talk about them? Who are they? So it's a different type of recruiting, and it's so based on reputation, so based on community. So that was something that I took with me back to the earlier point is, just as you build your network and community, one, you don't need to be calling those people all the time. You might call them once a year. You might talk to them twice a year, which earlier in my career, I thought like, networking, I need to be like calling Adam every month. I need to and that's awkward. What do I do? And then I came to realize also through some of the writing that Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn's founder, has done, that those types of connections sometimes are the most powerful. And I can attest to that. There are people I haven't talked to in 4 or 5 years that I contact. I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about moving to New York City, and I really want to start a new chapter of my career there. Can you help me? People do help each other, and you don't need to be talking to them constantly. Right. So that was a big learning.
It's a farming analogy, and it's an analogy that I use in recruiting all the time. It's planting seeds, watering them, fertilizing them, nurturing them, harvesting. It's that whole process. That's an analogy I give, and I talk a lot of young people about the value of relationships. I mean, it's crazy. I'm literally approaching my 20-year point post college, and looking back on it, all of my relationships in business, all my successes are predicated on relationships that I've had since day one. And I just try to lead by example and show everybody. They're like, Adam, how do you get this client? How do you get that business? You don't cold call anymore. I go, no, I warm call. I reach back out to people. And again, you don't have to talk to them every single day, but it's maintaining a presence and maintaining some kind of relationship that'll pay dividends. So fast forward to LinkedIn. Did you interview with Jeff directly for your role?
I did, yeah.
How does Jeff interview? If you don't mind.
It was a blast. I mean, he's a very he's a visionary, at the same time a very focused operator. And when I interviewed, I would say he was in a very strategic but highly operational mode. It was to scale the company. I mean, he just asked me, like, what's your dream job? My answer to that was, hello, I'm interviewing for my dream job. So I think he appreciated that. I think we did a little bit of work at the whiteboard talking about some things, but I think he really likes to understand who someone is and sort of what motivates them. I mean, he's a really compassionate leader. So I think he really tries to get into a little bit of like, how is this person going to align with our values and our culture? So part intense questioning and part, tell me why this is the right thing for you. And that's where I get into like, this, kidding me, this is a dream job for anyone recruiting.
I mean, we're talking 10 years ago, right? It's been 10 years, much different company. It wasn't owned by Microsoft. It was still an up and comer. It was still viewed as maybe, I hate to use the expression, like a second tier social platform or the resume and job board platform. I mean, that's how people look at it. And now it's come such an incredibly long way in so many years. Did you have that vision yourself when you joined? Like, what was your kind of mindset at, 10 years ago?
I mean, coming into TA at LinkedIn is, and we talk about ourselves as customer zero, just because we are the customer. Mm-hmm. And I tell you as Love a customer, tell anyone that hey, any feedback you give me on the product, I give right to the product team. Any complaint I have for the product team, it's on behalf of all my fellow recruiters out there. So the broader vision is one that I definitely attach myself to. We spend a lot of time very early on. We call it's a storyteller training. It's a 2-day training to get people to really tell the LinkedIn story, which is about creating economic opportunity. And that, as a recruiter, it's a good message to it's super fun to tell that story. So I wouldn't say the vision, I definitely didn't create the vision, but in terms of building and expanding on the vision, those are things that just that thinking allowed me to build apprentice programs and other things that ladder up to that.
Yeah, I love it. And I saw that firsthand at Talent Connect. There was a whole piece on, the economic opportunity. And I talk about it all the time. It was kind of this surprise and delight moment where I think it was the head of product. I forgot who it was. Said, or was it Jeff himself who said to reach under your seat? And then
Jeff said that.
It was Jeff, and underneath the seat, there was 3 passes for everyone there to pay forward a premium account, which was absolutely incredible for all of us to have that opportunity to help somebody else who may not be in that economic position to help themselves with a LinkedIn product to expand their career. So I saw it firsthand, and I still get the chills thinking about that moment, right? There was a collective energy, right? There was a collective surprise. And then once everyone kind of put the pieces together and saw what it was all about, that now we had the power in our hands to action what Jeff was talking about. I mean, that was magic, man. We talk about the network gap, and it's the idea that, think about the people that might randomly reach out to you that need some type of help. Cognitively, they're the same as a person who might have gone to an Ivy League school. There's no different in raw talent, but that person who literally has no network is in this network gap. And there's such a habit that's built of many of us, all of us. I could point to many jobs I had because I was privileged, born into privilege, and then had privileged network that got me opportunity. But there might be someone who needs some way to bridge this network gap. So something that I've been trying to do is, am I answering those outreaches, and am I creating those opportunities for people? Because those people who don't have a network gap fall between the cracks of a network and are afforded the same opportunity. So I think that's an example of a role that LinkedIn can absolutely play. I mean, 100%. I think back to when I applied to my first jobs on campus at Villanova, put my resume in a slot, a wooden job slot. Board. Yeah, it was crazy. A physical job board.
So the boundaries have been knocked down, and there's more access, but I think there's a long way to go to close the network gap.
Yeah, and I think that really is a great transition to the next part of our conversation. We're talking about current events and how LinkedIn itself is in a position to help. Right, and we talk about closing that network gap, and that's a step that I'm helping to take as well. Using my network, I have a great presence, I have a great network as well too. So really helping out, anyone, regardless of your skin color, but especially now more than ever. And I want to talk about something that is extremely important, innate to LinkedIn, which goes by the acronym DIB, which is diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And with talent priority being the number one operational priority at LinkedIn, how more than ever, especially right now, and we're recording the show on the 16th of June. It'll probably air in a couple of weeks from now, and everyone can pinpoint to current events. But let's talk a little bit about before 2 weeks ago, how LinkedIn was operating under this mindset, and what has changed.
Yeah,
if anything.
Yeah,
as much as you're open and willing to share, of course.
Yeah, and first of all, I'd speak just to my own sort of values on things. I stand against racial injustice. I stand against hate. I stand against racism. And I think all these things need to stop immediately.
100%.
In terms of LinkedIn and diversity, inclusion, and belonging, so that was a term coined several years ago. So that it's not attached in terms of its origin.
It's not new. It's not a new thing. It's not reactionary.
It's not reactionary. And it was, diversity, people have in the corporate ranks of HR have heard about and participated in and helped move the dial to the degree that they can. Inclusion, the same thing. The thinking is and has been that diversity and inclusion are necessary but not sufficient. Belonging needs to be there. So if you think about diversity, just to boil it way down, would be looking at what is the mix, actual mathematical mix of the talent on a given team and a given organization. Is it statistically diverse? That's absolutely necessary. Inclusion would be sort of, okay, we've got a diverse team. Inclusion is, did you get the email to show up to the meeting? And have you been included? That's absolutely necessary. Belonging makes all of it come together in that diversity inclusion. Yes, a diverse team, got the invite. I might show up to the meeting. I feel like I don't belong. I want to get the heck out of there.
Right.
I don't feel like I can participate. I'm not going to open my mouth. I'm involved in there some level. And then with people of color and diverse talent, I mean, there's all sorts of studies that say the percentage of your brain that gets occupied with the fact that you don't want to open your mouth dominates your thinking in a meeting like that, where you feel like you don't belong. You're not going to, and you can't be yourself. You can't add the value you would like. So belonging is the idea to create an environment where people feel like they can be themselves. So that's why DIBS became this sort of triumvirate of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And there's been that has been our number one talent priority. We rolled out the Rooney Rule a few years ago. We iterated on it. We have a diverse slate commitment, which has made a lot of impact. That's not new. I started something called RAMP, which is an apprenticeship program, which is the idea that you can have a good career in recruiting and a lucrative career at that, and doesn't matter if you dropped out of high school, like it's a learned skill. And back to the network gap, what if we created a program where we can take people who don't have access, get them in a program to teach them recruiting? We do it for several quarters, and the idea that someone hopefully can transition into a full-time role. But the goal is over 10 years to have 1,000 people go through that program, not just through LinkedIn, but have Adam Posner be someone who's a professor at the program, friends that are in recruiting at other companies participate in this entire community-based apprentice program to literally down the road, like literally change the way recruiting and tech looks. So a lot of the things we've been doing, were priorities before 2020. I think, go ahead.
No, sorry.
I was gonna say, and I think, current day, I mean, I think it's not enough. Like we need to all do more. So as a recruiting organization, I've been talking with my team about what conversations do we want to have. We talk about influence and advising, like how much truth telling do you want to do? How much do we want to push? Because I think we need to push in a tactful way. We need to bring data to the table. Things like what geography should we go to really expand our ability to hire diverse talent? How hard should we push on a true remote work strategy to change our ability to hire people where they are versus moving to a major expensive. So it's things like that
everything's changing. It's crazy.
Yeah, everything's changing. So I would say things are evolving. I think I'm thinking about how do I use my voice more and where and how and when. So it's an interesting time. I think we've pointed at a lot of the right things, but I think we need to just turn up the volume in a big way.
No, and I love it. And it's not, LinkedIn's just not talking the talk, but walking the walk. And I've seen that. So something that I've been thinking about even before current events right now is this concept of unconscious bias in recruiting. And I will be straight up. I could say that there has been times in my career, right, and maybe back on it, that I've been biased on looking at resumes, looking at candidates, and it's subconscious. There's things that you don't see, like you're implying thoughts based on a name, on a geography. How, generally speaking, and I'm not talking just specifically at LinkedIn, what are things and steps and ideas that we could do to remove this unconscious bias in talent acquisition?
Well, these are just riffing on ideas. These aren't things that like we're doing at scale today. One thing we are doing, we've got a project that we've launched that's gained a lot of momentum, which was giving someone the ability to just have the freedom to develop the basic qualification, the skills for basic qualifications as part of the process. So and if you can develop it through some learning, it could be LinkedIn learning, through some assessments you could take to say, yeah, I now have that and I'm now kind of a qualified candidate. So that's one idea. I have heard of companies doing anonymous interviewing where
I was talking about that with a friend yesterday. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think people have probably heard the story of like symphonies where they interview players or whatever, but they don't want to hear the shoes that they're wearing. That when they walk out, all sorts of things that could give away is it a man, is it a woman? I think there's some merit to those things for sure. I think with more and more remote work, that might even become more of a priority for people to figure out. Like, yeah. Those are a couple.
It's about leveling the playing field. And it's tough. And it really comes down, in my opinion, to values within an organization. Listen, we all have, we're all somebody else outside of work, but when we come into work, we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
Right. And what does that look like, from a value perspective? And then it's another conversation I've been having with my clients, and it's a really tough one because ultimately a company wants to hire the best person who's qualified for that job regardless. And then you layer on, ensuring, D&I and everything. And sometimes it becomes a little gray and sometimes it becomes a little tricky. And those are difficult conversations to have. And I think that's really what this time is. It's about being open to having those difficult conversations. And I can only assume right now in your position, you're having many of these, and I'm not asking you to unpack any of them, but is that energy there? Are people being more willing to have these type of talks?
Well, I think absolutely people are open to it. I think we've got some incredible leaders who are very open to it. I think we as recruiters know the recruiting process, and that's where we should press. And I think a lot of companies should think about either their users, their customers, their members, whatever type of business they're in. My feeling is if we want to serve an entire market, the entire market is diverse. So if we have a bunch of the same people building this product for 50 different types of users, isn't that a problem with our development process? And then therefore, who's actually driving the development process? Let's take a look at that. So wouldn't we be better served to have a broader perspective building our products if we want to really truly be successful? So I think there are things like that I think recruiters need to even speak up on, that even a little bit outside of sourcing and hiring, but who's going to build our products? Who are these human beings? What are their backgrounds, and what are we trying to build?
It reflects the employees are the fabric and the quilt of the organization, right? When you talk about culture and when you talk about the product and your feelings and who you are and your values, it translates into the final product.
Without
whether
question.
it be physical, it doesn't always have to be tangible. So let's dig into our craft of recruiting. And before we do that, I saw you quote somewhere that said, leading recruiting for LinkedIn is the best job on the planet, right? How does that feel every day, right? When you and people always say if you love what you do, it's not going to feel like work, right?
Well, the part of the joy I get out of is having been smiling and dialing back in the day and understanding. I literally would contact someone who I didn't know. I didn't even know it was a real name, who would send me photocopies of information I probably shouldn't have, names and numbers. Anything to get names and numbers. It was this is a gold. I had these things stacked in my garage for years and years until it was I know you
were using a fax machine. You were there.
Totally. So even when I got to LinkedIn, never mind right now, but the ability to do things with data, it sounds cliche, but it's freaking mind boggling.
Yeah.
To be able to walk into you as a hiring manager and say, Adam, this is a real example. Go into our head of engineering when recruiting is getting a lot of pressure, getting hammered by we all know the pressure.
Of course.
And just brought data to him and said, hey, look, we really need systems infrastructure engineers. I just quickly sized up that market, the 2,000 best people that your VPs agreed to. Yeah. 699 of the 2,000 know you and your organization personally.
Right. Let's look at the relationship. Let's triangulate it. Let's see who knows who, and let's figure out the best way to get to those.
Totally.
People.
So how about those that you own those? I don't even want recruiting going after them. We'll mobilize you. We'll get you moving. And we knew statistically, because we tested it, that when that happens, the response rate goes from about 28% to 85%. So stuff like that is just this is just fun. It's just fun. You're just trying to figure out how to influence and get the results we want.
And I'm smiling right now because I literally had this conversation with one of my clients the other day, and we identified, we mapped the target, right? We mapped our target audience here. And I said, look, you're connected to, you're connected either first or second connections to already 40 of these candidates. I'm just reach out to them. And when a CEO or a key decision maker reaches out versus a recruiter, it's much more impactful. Right, these candidates are getting hammered all day long by recruiters, whether it be by emails, whether it be by all these third-party platforms that are hacking your email, and you're getting crazy emails to your work, no one wants to get an email to their work address. It's so invasive. So let's talk a little bit about, how LinkedIn recruits. And I am only assuming here that, like, listen, I'm sure there's some jobs that even LinkedIn has difficulty filling, right? These are either highly specific, specialized niche, certain geographies and so forth. But how does LinkedIn generally what's the process here? What are some of the secrets of LinkedIn's own recruiting?
The processes vary by the sales org has a different process than the engineering organization. But a big step in the process would obviously be use data to size up market. So what I care, baseline principles are, as a recruiter, do you know your TAM, your total addressable market? I don't care how many people are in the process. Do you actually know quantitatively the size of your addressable market, be it in your major metro that you live in, the state, whatever the right size of the geography is? Okay, do you know that? And then have you segmented that in a way, meaning what percentage of those people know people at LinkedIn? And this is all in LinkedIn Recruiter. You can get this data.
It's not that hard once you figure out how to use Recruiter. It's all searchable and
so
searchable.
It's all there. And so a lot of that is an easy entree to go back to a hiring manager and have a conversation like we were just talking about, which is hey, 700 of the 2,000 people know your organization. 200 of them applied to positions in the past year. 500 of them follow our company. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a branding and marketing campaign to those that have some affinity, but just a little bit. The ones that we know directly, we're going to have a one-to-one campaign.
Reach out.
So and it's not hard to do. It's not hard to do this stuff. So that's sort of the baseline stuff. And then a big component of what we do is storytelling. We spend 2 days training every single recruiter on how to tell the story. And that to me is, I feel like most recruiters, I contact you. Hey, Adam, it's Brendan from xyz.com. Great company. We got a bunch of venture capital. We're growing like mad. How much job experience do you have? That effectively is the story, which that person should never recruit again in their life, because that is not a story. So a big belief is you need to capture the imagination of candidates to the point that they just can't help themselves. They get off the phone, they go tell their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their spouse, their friends, I just had this crazy conversation. So that's a big step in the process that I think most recruiting teams fail on.
Pause on that for 1 second, because I say this all the time, and I say this to my clients, and I say to recruiters that I'm working with in training. I go, your recruiter is your brand ambassador. They are the first point of contact for any potential new employee who's going to join your organization. So they, exactly as you said, they have to be able to articulate the story. They have to do it effectively. They have to do it compassionately, and they have to be able to answer as many questions as possible immediately, right? They have to understand the values. They have to understand the direction. Now, there may be some pieces of information they may not know. And we're talking about in-house recruiters. And also, let's be honest. And I say too, if you're working with a contingency recruiter on the outside, you want to work with a contingency recruiter who's going to be able to properly articulate and tell your company's story.
Yeah, without a doubt.
100%. Right?
Without a doubt.
And thank you for verifying that. I'm literally going to take this clip and I'm going to send it to my clients and say, yes, I was onto that, right?
I would say it's one, maybe it's one of, it might be the most overlooked thing that I see in recruiting, because for some reason people think they need to jump into 3 sentences on the company and then I'm going to qualify you.
Right.
You got to blow my mind, man. You want my time and attention? You better be coming with something that's going to blow my mind.
In this day and age and in this market, absolutely.
And that, there's all sorts of other, we do a lot of training on that. And then actually at one of the Talent Connects, I talked about the science of storytelling, and it's not, there's oxytocin gets released in the brain, chemicals get released in the brain. When you tell a good story, you're going to have a bond with candidates that other recruiters won't. So it's something I think is definitely, whether you're contingent, in-house, it's something that I think is overlooked.
Absolutely. And then when we talk about the candidate experience as well, too, I have to think that you're hyper-focused on that. Exactly. The touch points. We're talking in a day and age where we're doing everything, remotely on our side here in New York,
yeah.
San Fran and Silicon Valley, and most of your offices are under that still kind of premise of lockdown. But what is that general, we're not going to break it down. We don't have 5 hours right now, but for the candidate experience, but what is a general guiding principles as far as how LinkedIn approaches candidate experience?
Yeah. The general thesis is similar to storytelling. Our goal is to blow your mind. And it's not just all, it's real experience. I mean, there's some fun stuff too.
Yeah, so not just all water bottles and T-shirts.
No, it's just we want some.
I have a great glass water bottle too. I love it.
And we'll do that. We want someone to feel like they're understanding the culture. So there's things when we were back on campus, and we now do these virtually through different some video work we're doing. But like, get the heck out of the conference room. If Adam's coming to visit and for 5 hours, if we have you in a conference room, that's ridiculous. So, one, fully immerse someone. Two, feature your product in some way in the candidate experience. Obviously, it's super easy for LinkedIn. I can call you and be like, hey, our product's got us connected. But if you make servers, if you make furniture, there's ways that I think people also overlook in the candidate experience. If you're not drawing someone in to understand your product, even if it's just a straight up demo. But, I saw Spotify do something really cool. They were hiring a head of listening experiences, and they made this really cool personalized listening experience for the candidate. I'm like,
I've seen
that's
this.
pretty darn smart.
Yeah.
So things like that are things.
Put them into the experience. Put them into the product.
Put them into the product.
If it's that type of product.
Yeah, and make sure they understand how the company works. Get a feel for the culture through walking around. And then in terms of follow-up and follow-through, I think speed of process matters. We look at time in process. We look at a bunch of metrics, but that's one I'm always interested in. Adam started the process today. How long does it take us to get to the point where whether you're moving forward or not? If we can do that really quickly, the experience tends to be good. And then in terms of turning people down, we measure everyone that interviews. So whether we hired you or not. And the thing I'm most concerned about is those that we don't hire, what type of NPS are they giving us? And what one challenge we've laid out and we've never done, well, we might have done it maybe one quarter, was the NPSs for those that we offer, usually are a little bit higher, the net promoter score for those that we turn down a little bit lower. But what would you have to do to have them be the same? Meaning like the people we turn away, could we have a better experience for them?
Yeah, like how are they supposed to feel not getting, and there's different levels of that too. There's everything from simple job application, totally. That, all the way to final round, and you're getting passed on for another candidate, because that happens all the time too. Yeah. Right. I always tell people, I go, pick up the phone. Simple as that. People it comes down to managing expectations.
Totally.
Right. And closing that loop. Somebody wants to know is, at any point in that journey, where do I stand? What does timing look like, and what are my expectations?
I tell the team there is a job that I interviewed for at one point, and I really thought I was going to get it, and I didn't get it. But it was a Friday at 4:00, and their CEO was calling me to tell me the results of the interview. And like, I had dinner with the guy. Like, I was like, I'm in. And I didn't get the job, but it probably was a 5-minute call, maybe 3 minutes, but it nailed exactly what you're saying. He called me when he said he was going to call me. The interview process had just concluded a few days prior. He let me know his decision. He offered me ways he could help me going forward, which he did. 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. And I mean, that was years ago. I remember this day. I was like, it takes 5 minutes. He didn't have to do that. He could have had some HR person call me and let me go. So there are these small things around candidate experience, I think, that matter. And then when it comes to closing, I always feel like, who do you need in the process? You need our CEO? No, he's too busy. No, that's not the right attitude. Whatever we got to do to get this deal closed and create the right experience, go create it. So try to have a sense of urgency and a feeling of we want to blow someone's mind.
What are your thoughts, right? And I kind of have this conversation all the time too with hiring managers too. They play the Goldilocks, too hard, too small, too soft, right? Like not right. Like I always say through the process, and it's kind of like a rule of thumb. If you're interviewing somebody and it feels right in your gut and they're checking at least 85% of those, I hate to use the word boxes, but as far as those actual skills that they need for the job and all the soft skills are there, you make the hire. Yeah. Right. You make the hire. What's kind of your thoughts on urgency and timing?
In terms of how quickly to make a hire?
Right. Like if someone feels good and they're not a 10 out of 10, but they're like 8 or 9 out of 10 and they just feel right and they feel like a good fit. Like, because I always find that to be tough with different hiring managers. Some hiring managers, like they may say, hey, I think this guy or girl is great. Their fat lady is great. They're fantastic, but I want to see 4 more candidates to make sure.
Well, I guess in terms of in terms of hiring manager, I mean, there's a little extra, and I might have even a video on this I could send you. So,
Really?
so one in terms of time.
It's on LinkedIn Learning, everybody. Let's do a plug there.
I got to get my little course on there. But in terms of time, that's one where hiring managers come out of the woodwork. Oh, it's taking too long. There's an exercise we do where like, hey, all right, Adam, the hiring manager, let's get up at the whiteboard or the virtual whiteboard. Here's a marker. You said you'd have the job description. You don't you don't have the job description done. You said you'd have it done last Friday.
Now
like
we're 10 days later.
Yeah, exactly. And then write on the whiteboard.
Now?
7 days. Okay, so we're 7 days in. Okay, we need to do some sourcing, some calibrate. That's going to take a week, and I need you to get back to me. So you just start charting out the fact that
you don't have candidates available for me right away. That's
exactly.
What do you mean you don't have 5 candidates that are interested like within 2 days?
So there's a lot of education like that I think we all forget to do, that we sit around thinking about it, but hiring managers don't. So I want to set at least a timetable and tell them either the timing or the number of candidates. Once we have 4 candidates, Adam, that go through the whole process, we will make a decision unless there's a major problem.
So 4 is kind of a rule of thumb, like 4 candidates, like 4 like down the road in the process.
Somewhere between probably 4 and 6 that make it through the whole process feels really good to me.
I agree.
And then in terms of someone who's like, yeah, they're 80% there, I would suggest seeing some more candidates as long as within a reasonable time frame. And then I also think that, hey, that person's 80% there. I'm not really sure if, this person's right. My bias is to go tell them. Don't say you're not right, but just say, just be as transparent as you can to give someone the opportunity to respond. I mean, I'm sure I've interviewed people that I should have asked them one more very transparent question, even if it's a concern, to give them an opportunity to say, hey, I'm glad you're bringing that up. I've been working on that, or, I actually have done some of that work. So I do see those things where people may even not make the hire because they haven't said what needs to be said. They haven't had an open, honest conversation with the candidate.
Right. And that's something that I talk about with candidates too. And I used to, and kind of still do, give the advice at the end of an interview to say, hey, Brendan, thank you so much for taking the time to interview me. I really appreciate it. Is there anything, that, important to this job, imperative to this job that we have not discussed in my background? Do you have any additional questions? And kind of, because sometimes at the end of the interview, the interviewer is ready to go. They're looking at their clock or their mind is somewhere else. Like, how do you have to keep them focused. And
I think that's a great idea.
And that's another question too. What kind of training do you work with hiring managers for consistency and accuracy, for accurate, assessment of each candidate?
I mean, we have interview training. It's largely behavioral-based interview training. We have unconscious bias training. We have inclusive leadership training, all things to make sure that we're fair and equitable in our processes. And then, in certain functions like in engineering, I mean, there's a lot of consistency around the types of questions that are asked to make sure that there's some consistency in the process, where I think is paramount when it comes to interview and assessment. But, I think those things always need to be looked at on a recurring basis to, one, make sure that they're fair and equitable, but also, I think Google did the research that, I don't know what the number was, no more than 5, like after the 5th interview or something, the return is minimal. It's
a diminishing return on it.
Yeah. Just so I have a lot of questions on if someone for certain jobs has the skills, like it's undeniable, like you know how to work the algorithm or work the machine or whatever, you know how to do the skill. And then you need to assess on maybe values alignment. That shouldn't take like 10 hours. So I think
a couple different feelings.
I think the process is still flawed over, like I'm talking at large in the world of work. Mm-hmm. There's got to be faster, better, more equitable ways to interview, particularly when you can say, I have the skill. I mean, you can't deny that I can do this work.
Yeah. And how is, everything going on with COVID right now, and who knows about the future of work, who knows when we're returning to physical, working together again, how did LinkedIn respond to this? How did you adjust this overall process, the TA process of people coming in, and what effects have you seen from it, positive and negative?
That's a good one. It was a fire drill for sure when,
all hands on deck.
Yeah, I was on a road trip, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and was on conference calls driving in the dark. And it was because we were trying to switch all our interviews like the next day. to online. So it was a rapid move to virtual interviewing, and I think it went well. This is another place where we really watched our net promoter scores to see like, and interestingly, they went up, and the people that we declined, that we interviewed virtually, actually bumped higher than we've seen. That was interesting. It was really interesting. So I'd say it's gone well. I think there's more improvement we can make, back to the point of, we don't want it to just be okay and sufficient. We want it to be really special experience. So I think we can always strive to do more.
Right. And it's how do you integrate more technology? At what point is a video? Is it video every point? So it's more of that human touch. Like, how is this going to work? Right. And there's so many unanswered questions. And I think it also takes some empathy and understanding on the candidate side as well, too, right? I think there's some responsibility there, because we're all going through this together, right? At no point ever in the history of the world has everyone like kind of been on the same page, where we're all figuring this out, we're all in the same boat, and we just need a little patience from everybody. And I think hopefully we're at that point. $1 million question here: what is the secret trick to getting a job at LinkedIn?
What is the secret trick to getting a job at LinkedIn?
Is it like a backdoor email resume? Do you go right to El Jefe, Jeff himself? Well, not Jeff anymore. I mean, we got Ryan in there.
Yeah.
How do we? Ryan was great, by the way. Side note, I invited him to our original live event, by the way, too, and he saw it. He's like, "Oh, that's pretty cool, too." So he did see it. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. He's engaged.
Ryan,
I like it.
He's a product genius. There's no question. In terms of how do you get
right? Like, what's the best approach to kind of get?
This is what I would say, and I would say it applies to not just LinkedIn. It just applies to anyone wanting to use LinkedIn to find a job. The amount of differentiation you can create for yourself as a candidate in today's world is unusual. I mean, it's unbelievable, frankly. So I'd say if you really want to get a job, be it at LinkedIn or any other company, like you're serious about you want to get a job there, slow down. I mean, you probably know more than me. I mean, you live in the world of content. A, you can create your own content. B, you can showcase the work you've done on your LinkedIn profile or otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
C, you could interview someone, and I mean, it's such a blank canvas where if you can either demonstrate skills that you want to be hired for, create a differentiated reputation around yourself, or simply get in touch with people who can help navigate you into a company, those three things, there's no barriers to doing those things. I think the biggest barrier at times for people is either they're too busy or slow down. Or then I'd say if you can do those first two things, then the next question would be like, well, how bad do you want it? You know, like if you really want a dream job at BMW, it may not happen right away, but there's a lot of opportunity for you to do more than just hit apply. So, you know, I would draw attention to yourself in a positive, tasteful, meaningful way related to the job. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people have done really cool things either about LinkedIn or related to LinkedIn, thrown it up on the feed, and then Jeff would zip the thing over to me in an email and be like, check this thing out. And immediately we're like, this is awesome.
Right.
Let's at least reach out to this person. So I would say slow down and realize that there's a lot of doors that you can open on your own, or at least begin to open on your own.
And what if I told everybody listening right now that this is my door opener into my potential job at LinkedIn? Think about that for a minute.
Very meta.
Think about that for a minute, everybody. No, seriously, we'll think about that for a minute. So let's shift gears to some fun stuff here, Brendan. Now, when you're not at work, when you're not at LinkedIn, or family man, how many kids? 1, 2 kids?
I have one, yeah.
You have one kid right now. Into music, DJ, playing instruments. So DJ Blue, where did that come about, first of all?
DJ Blue, probably.
I love DJ names. DJ names are great.
Probably started because my wife and her friends have called me Blue for a long time, and then it just sort of evolved into DJ Blue. But yeah, I DJ a little bit. I make beats. I play a lot of guitar and stuff, and try to stay as creative as possible.
What would you say your core musical influences are?
Whew. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many. I mean, any 80s and 90s hip hop, like across the board. Anyone wants to talk shop.
Are you East Coast or West Coast, though?
I grew up in Boston, so it was a lot of East Coast.
What was like Onyx? Is Onyx from Boston? Was Onyx? Remember
Onyx
Slam?
Yeah.
I don't know why that came. It just like literally, it's one of those things that just came to mind.
Yeah, but I mean, like
Pain was from Boston, right?
House of Pain was not from Boston.
No?
It was California.
They were West Coast? Oh, for some reason.
So their other big influences are like all sorts of James Brown funk kind of stuff. Parliament, Funkadelic,
George
Sly, Family Stone.
Fantastic. Oh man, Landing of the Mothership Man. Oh,
yeah, that stuff
better.
is big. And then I mean, it's just so many different musical tastes. So I'm into like singer-songwriter stuff. I'm into classic rock. So those are probably some of my bigger influences.
And how do you like play music around the house? Like how are you infusing that into your kid?
I mean, we've got a little studio. He plays the drums.
Oh, awesome.
So
how old is he?
He's 13. So the strategy there is to not be like, hey man, you got to go practice the drums. But I'll just go in there and just start playing the guitar, and then he'll hear it and we'll show up and we'll start playing.
That's awesome.
So yeah, just it's a way to unwind, and it's a way to just stay creative.
And how do you balance it all, man? Right. And I always love talking to, accomplished senior level executives, right? I mean, I assume you're on the clock pretty much all the time. It's a 24/7 job, but like, how do you separate? How do you make sure that you're, giving everyone enough, Brendan?
It's a good question. Try really hard to take care of myself. I mean, my goal this year was to be be as flexible as I can, literally. So I do literally about 15 or 20 minutes of yoga, probably about 4 times a week. Which, like, if you told me this a couple of years ago, I'd be like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, why would I do that? Why would I do that? That makes no sense. I would just go for a run. So I'm doing that, and then trying to keep really clear that no matter what happens, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So think about like if there's work stress, or like someone's upset with me, or what's happening with this project, or this is coming off the rails, or whatever, realizing that no matter what, like the things that really, really matter are going to be with me, and everything's going to be okay. Because if I get really wrapped up in work stress, which I've done way too many times, that's when there's not enough of me to go around. That's when I get off of work and dinner with the family in my head, or like I'm not really present with my kid, or it sucks. It's terrible, and it ultimately, this isn't the most important thing in life. It's very important, my job, but there are other things that really matter most.
Well, that's interesting too. So how, I think a big problem that a lot of folks are having these days is no separation between work and home. Right. And I know for myself, for a fact, I'll literally work till 7 o'clock. I'll hear the dinner bell downstairs, and I won't have that decompression time, that time in the commute, that time in the car, that time, I don't know if you take the BART, wherever you go, right? Like, that time to decompress and say, I'm done with work for the day and I'm going home. Like, how do you manage that? How do you give yourself like that minute to breathe and shift into family mode?
I mean, that's when I do literally the 15 minutes of yoga.
That's when you do it.
Outside. I'll just be like, hey, I'll be, we'll get done in a minute. Yeah, exactly. But I'm the same. I mean, I didn't mind sitting in a little bit of traffic because I would just detach, I can unwind, and it's a good thing. So
I didn't mind it. When I was going to the city, it was tough. Brendan, what are you scared of these days?
There's a lot that I'm scared of. Well, I'm everything that's going on is a little scary. I mean, I think it's very, very unknown. I'm probably most scared that I can't be as present as I know I can be. I mean, back to the earlier commentary, and I want to be really vigilant about that, because I can't help myself. I can't help my son. I can't be there for my wife the way I want to be. I can't be the friend I want to be if I'm fully consumed with my ego getting wrapped up in things, fears around my ego get wrapped up in things. So my biggest fear is probably not being present of mind, being spiritually, physically, mentally healthy. Because I know when that and I've had those periods in my career for sure. Like I've gotten, and it's terrible. It's terrible. You think you really get wrapped around the axle about things that really don't matter. And more broadly than that, I fear not having peace in the world. I mean, that's definitely frightening.
Scary. It is. Yeah. I mean, let's shift to some more positive conversation here. I'm approaching almost 100 shows of the podcast here.
Congrats.
And it's really, thank you. And it's been my masterclass. It's been my MBA, and I've been lucky to interview amazing folks like yourself who have incredible careers and experiences. So I'd love to ask a couple of questions here. What is the single greatest piece of it? And I ask this question to every guest. What is the single greatest piece of advice that you've ever received that you take action on every single day?
Well, there's something around sort of the idea of keep showing up, or whatever whoever said, Woody Allen or someone said, half a life, or where 90% is just showing up. That sounds super duper basic,
right?
But I think I've done a decent job of that in the career context, because even on awful days, bad stretches of work, like days I didn't want to do it, I still get up and did it. So that, this advice that Jeff Weiner gave me, I think someone passed on to him, but there are these sort of 5 keys to happiness. And one of them is being a spectator to your thoughts, especially in times of stress. That's something I think about. I take action every day. Some days I fail at it. But if I can separate myself from like how I'm feeling and step back from it, I find that I can get through things. And then another one that I try to act on every day is it's more important to be loving than it is to be right. And I think, anyone in a relationship, there are those times where like you want to be right, but being loving is the most important thing. So those are a couple that kind of keep me rolling.
Fantastic. No, those are absolutely fantastic. And, we've all been going through a lot the last 3 months, and I'm asking everybody like about this concept of silver linings. There are things that we think from the outside look terrible, they look awful, but you know what? Like, hey, the last 3 months, guess what? We're all closer with our families. We're all trying new things. Yep. We're doing things. So I'd love if you could share a personal silver lining and a professional silver lining that you've experienced over the last 100 days.
Personal silver lining for sure. What you just said. The number of we haven't ordered food, like ordered out, since mid-March or something. So made meals every single day and sat down together as a family and had meals every single day. There's no question we'll look back and say, wow, 2020, remember all that time we had together. I know that will happen. So I feel that's been a silver lining and continuing to operate that way, that is a positive. And then professional silver lining is, I think, the changes that are afoot and happening around racial injustice, and even in the work context, uncomfortable conversation, difficult topics, hard things happen. But I feel optimistic. I feel weird saying that I'm in the midst of this, but I think these conversations are ones that I haven't seen happening in my lifetime. So I think we're beyond an inflection point. I think we're definitely at an inflection point. So those are the two that I think about. And I think your questions are good, like act on every day. I want to make sure I'm sort of acting positively on both of those things every day.
That's tremendous. And last but not least, as we talked about throughout this conversation, not every day is going to be amazing, right? You're going to be in a tough spot. You're going to be up against the wall. You're going to be having these difficult conversations. Maybe you have to let people go, which is one of the hardest things for any hiring manager to do. And then on the flip side, right, you're having amazing conversations. You're seeing change. You're hiring great people, and you're making a difference in this world. So when you're down at your lowest and you need to pull yourself up, and in the same breath, when you want to show gratitude and just appreciation for everything amazing that's happening in the world, Brendan Browne, what is your North Star?
My North Star, probably more important to be loving than right. That propels me forward and keeps me grounded in that. Whatever. Not even LinkedIn examples, but like in work, wrapped around the axle, is some political going on. You want to mix it up and get into it. Just the stuff that happens in the workplace. Even in those situations where I'm super stressed, trying to make sure in the right context, I'm loving and positive. And I would say historically, if you interviewed me 10 years ago, I'm an upbeat, positive guy. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, anyone who's super positive all the time, I would question. I'd be like, why are they so positive all the time?
What are they on?
And now I have a lot of respect for people that are truly positive all the time, even if it seems like, whoa, they're over the top positive. I have nothing but respect for that. And life is just way too short, unfortunately, for all of us. So I'm trying to make sure any learnings I have, I put into practice. And I think being loving over being right, it sounds super simple, but like, you know, next time you're super stressed in a relationship with someone and you want to be right, ask yourself, do you need to be right?
Yeah. Love it.
So,
Brendan Browne, thank you for spending time with us today. I certainly appreciate you. Where could folks find you? Where could they catch up with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn anytime. It's Brendan Browne, Brown with an E on the end. You can also check out some of my music if you want. You can check out Both Hands, which is an album under DJ Blue. Another shameless plug. I put out another album this year. So Both Hands by DJ Blue, and then I've also got an album called Insomniac Stargazer under the handle The Real Blue.
Okay, you're going to have to link me to these so I can link it when we drop the show.
I will do that.
Brendan Browne, thank you again. I greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Adam. Appreciate it.
Hold on one second. And everyone listening and following along, thank you for joining us. Please be sure to catch us on all your social media channels. And you could always catch up on the podcast, www.thepodcast.com. Remember, take care of each other, wash your hands, stay 6 feet apart, and catch us next week for another great episode of The Podcast.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode jam-packed with more incredible humans. For more info, please visit www.nhptalentgroup.com.